You're watching the Team Nerd Tech Show with your hosts, Tim Gillen and Ruthie Kierlin.
Hello, nerds. Thanks for joining us this week again on the Team Nerd Tech Show. I'm Tim Gillen with Terrapin Networks in Traverse City, Michigan. Here is your primary host this week and every week for the Small Biz Tech Digest. And along with me, along for the ride, as always, our producer and co-host, Ruthie Kierlin, calling in from Queens, New York. Hello, Ruthie.
Hello, Tim.
Hello,
how are you
Ruthie.
this week?
Good, thank you.
Good. So interesting stuff we're going to be covering this week. I'm excited about this episode. This is number 53 if you want to follow along at home or at teamnerdtechshow.com. So the first thing we're going to be talking about today for tech news is an update on Starlink and SpaceX, the two initiatives from Elon Musk, to basically bring internet to the world, essentially. And we spoke about this the first time in episode number 36 with Aurelian Balan, who's that physicist from Delta College in Michigan. And I wanted to kind of give you an update on where the company was and what they're doing now, what they've been up to. We're also going to be talking about in Tech Tip about domain name registrations, what to do when you have a really old domain name for your website that you want to switch, maybe how to take care of older stuff, getting this switched, maybe an older employee registered your domain and they don't work for you anymore. Like, how do you handle domain registration issues? And then for Tech Gadget, this thing is so cool. It's an app that was released earlier this week that we're recording, so mid-February, about what Internet of Things appliances are tracking you nearby. So you can use this app to see what's watching your every move, what's keeping your analytics, your tracking and everything. It's pretty cool. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the Team Nerd Tech Show with your host, Tim Gillen. I am Ruthie Kierlin. So let's pop in now to tech news and talk about this article that you shared on our Twitter, terrapin.tech, from ZDNet. It's about how Elon Musk's, well, it's basically just a catch-up on what's going on with Elon Musk's SpaceX and Starlink, correct?
Yeah, so Elon Musk has SpaceX, which is a commercial space exploration, and that's what he's using as a prime thing for his vision of getting humans to Mars. But one of the ways that he's doing to finance that, one of his initial visions of it, is what he calls Starlink, which is a big mesh of thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit, lower than like weather satellites, lower Earth orbit, around the globe to provide internet access to people down here on Earth. And in other words, bluntly, to replace Comcast, Charter, whatever you might be using, Verizon, on the Verizon Fios as an internet ISP, internet services provider. Now, the idea here is that satellite internet's always been slow because of what's called latency. It's not slow, but it feels slow to use because of what's called latency, which is the time it takes for your little antenna, your pizza box size antenna next to your house, to actually make contact with the satellite up in the higher Earth orbit and then come back. Once that is established, it's not too bad. But because of that, there's so much distance and time. More power is required from the satellite. They're larger, more expensive satellites. They charge for bandwidth. It's almost a last resort type of internet access.
Okay. As opposed to cable or fiber or anything.
Yeah,
like
that people get when they're in a geographic location that does not have access to a wired connection of some kind to your home, even fiber, like we're doing here in Traverse City, Michigan. Our local Light and Power is starting to roll out a fiber connection to people inside the city. So when you use wires, that's generally your first choice. I can wire it to my home or office. That's what I want to do. If I don't have that option because I'm out in a more rural area, and sometimes even for us in northern Michigan, you can just be 15 miles outside of Traverse City and you don't have access. So you go to satellite, but it's lousy. And so anyway, the idea of Starlink is that it won't be lousy. And it will provide internet access really to the planet.
Everywhere.
Yeah, and to the populated parts of the planet as much as they want to, with thousands of these low Earth orbits satellites all working in a little mesh and all overlapping each other, and through AI, through artificial intelligence, not running into each other. There's a lot of risk with it. Elon doesn't think there's any risk to it at all, but that's Elon, and he's pretty
Well,
good
yeah, and we got into all these kind of risks when we talked to Aurelian Balan back in episode 36. So
Yeah.
the things that were kind of missed and brushed aside while they were getting all of this planned and ready to go. So
Well,
yeah,
and
it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah, Aurelian came along because he and I met at a star party. We're both amateur astronomers. He's an astrophysicist from Delta College here in mid-Michigan. And he spoke at a star party, which is where amateur astronomers go out into a field in the middle of the month when there's no moon and go star crazy nerd telescope.
It's pretty nerdy. It's pretty nerdy.
It's pretty nerdy. That's a fair thing to say. But so what we don't like about it as astronomers is the light pollution. These things now, when you look at
these satellites.
Yeah, you see all these. You're trying to do a solar or rather stellar observing with your telescope, and maybe stellar photography through a telescope, and you've got these satellites endlessly crisscrossing, and it really messes up the night sky. Elon Musk kind of shrugs his shoulders at that, but they have made several adjustments, and they have to the brightness factor, albedo as it's called, but the brightness factor of these things. They can turn them a little bit. They are putting a different dark coating on them. They're trying to ameliorate that somewhat. It's been spotty, frankly.
And then do they cover that in this article from ZDNet? What are they sharing here about the updates?
All they're really sharing here is that they launched another round of 60. They keep launching 60 at a time. So the SpaceX rocket goes up and then launches 60.
60 satellites for internet connectivity.
Yeah. And this is, I think, the fifth one of 60 that they put up there. Wow. So now they're getting around 300 of them.
Yeah, and it said they're going to do another 50 or 60 in March.
Right. They're just going to keep doing this until it gets, several thousand up there. And it really now, from a technology perspective and from an internet access, and from ability for people who are in rural areas and in underpopulated parts of the globe, other countries in Africa and so forth, to be able to have this kind of access that's pretty cool. For the population of the globe, it's kind of neat. However, there's some real drawbacks to it that are just yet to be determined. That's what we talked about with Aurelian. And we're watching this closely. I'm watching it closely as an amateur astronomer because I'm into that kind of thing, and I'm also watching it closely as a technologist and a person who's very interested in internet service providers
and connectivity and how that affects people.
We have customers and people we support that could really make use of something like this. So I see the good and the bad from it. Now, one of the real bad things, just to get all kind of crazy, is what's called the Kessler Syndrome. And what that means is if there's collisions of these things up in space or someone takes them over.
That's a little nerve-wracking.
Maliciously, the collisions will cause enough space debris that we can no longer leave the planet. That's called the Kessler Syndrome. And we have no real way yet of getting, no effective way of getting space debris. There's already a lot of space debris up there, but it's small. Imagine if 5 of these things bump into each other and break up. Now, these are not very large devices. They're not the size of even a room. They're the size of an easy chair. They're not really big, which is kind of neat. But they still break up in all these pieces, very small pieces up especially in low orbit.
And how do we collect that? I mean, it's like
really difficult.
Plastic in the ocean. How would you
exactly?
You can't just go out and scoop it all up.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy. But what the Kessler Syndrome says that if we have one or more catastrophic events like this, we won't be able to get any rockets out of here. There's no going to the moon or Mars or even doing other satellites. We could completely darken that part of our ability to leave the planet, which is
and there's no governing body that's looking out for something like this, is there?
No, there really isn't, and that's part of what we talked about with Aurelia back in that episode 36. Was that's part of the problem here is that the FCC, who has nothing to do with the FCC. The Federal Communications Commission here in the United States has authority over internet service providers. But of course, the FAA or NASA, you'd think would be out in space.
Yeah.
So this kind of into this gray area, which Elon, being Elon, kind of took advantage of. And they went, internet access everywhere. You got a way to do this? Sure. That sounds awesome. I mean,
without thinking about any of the possible ramifications, basically.
Yeah. And then astronomers start freaking out immediately. Wait a second. Because if you've seen these, what happens when they first get launched, you see a train going across the sky of 60 satellites all in a row. it's kind of fascinating. And then over time, they spread out into where they belong in the grid. It's very high technology. It's really neat stuff. The rocket part to get them up there is neat. The way the mesh works is neat, and more than neat, it's really high tech and extremely highly engineered and extremely well done. And this last one of the things they do is they reuse the I will call it the primary rocket, and it comes down and they actually catch it on a ship in the ocean. It lands on one, and this one missed, which can happen.
Ooh.
Yeah, but they've shown very, very high technology to make all this stuff work, which is just A1, really impressive to look at and see what they've done. The concept of it, again, outstanding. The practical part of it, still kind of keeping an eye on. So we'll report as more of these get launched, and we have a link to an article on ZDNet, Ziff Davis Net, which is an old computer site, been part of computer magazines for really from the beginning of personal computers in the 80s. They have a good article on it.
Welcome back to the Team Nerd Tech Show with your host, Tim Gillen. I am Ruthie Kierwin. We're going to be moving into our tech tip now, which is talking about domain name registration for your company's website. So talk to me about this a little bit. What are some, it seems pretty straightforward. You buy a domain, you hook it up to a website, but what are some of the dangers and the issues that people might run into with that?
Well, we just had a thing happen with one of our customers. That's why it seemed kind of good to bring it up. And and I'll use our company right now as an example. So we're Terrapin Networks, and we started back in the early 90s, and our name was Terrapin Computer Company. And so let's just say, this isn't exactly how it worked for us, but let's just say we had registered terrapincomputercompany.com back in the mid 90s when we were all just starting to register small company domain names. And then we realized later, well, of course, we changed our name to Terrapin Networks. And in our case, we used terrapinit.com for a number of years. And
so you switched and you moved to a new, something that reflected your company a little bit better.
Yeah, and a little bit shorter, easier to say. And we started realizing, okay, you don't necessarily want your whole big...
You don't want to spell it out every single time.
This is the city of Traverse City parking lot on 14th Street.com, which people were kind of doing back then. There was a thought, there was a mindset that you really wanted to just have the whole thing there. Things evolve. We realize actually it makes more sense to have it be shorter and easier to remember and say and print on a business card and on advertising brochures and whatever it might be. So in our case right now, we use terrapin.tech. We use .tech. It's a TLD, a top level domain that you could get once it became available. We got it. It's worked really well for us. And we still have a lot of stuff out there for terrapinit.com. We use that for years, and it still resolves to our main homepage on our website.
So if you go to terrapinit.com, it will still just pop up as terrapin.tech.
Exactly.
Essentially. Now,
here's what can happen. You might have registered that big, long one, terrapincomputercompany.com, back in the 90s, and somebody may have kind of handled that for you, who you no longer work with. They may be out of business. It may be an employee who's long since gone, and they may have used an email address that doesn't even exist anymore. And if you didn't keep up with that, you can lose contact with that. Now, you may not. The worry isn't always so much that someone else may have it, but because you may have registered it for 10 years, you may have continued to just let it re-register itself because you left a credit card on there that's still a good credit card. Any number of things could keep that part going. But the thing is, for example, this particular customer has a long one like terrapincomputercompany.com they don't use, but there's still some stuff out there that does use it. And we've changed email around, so now we need to make some records changes so that if I send an email to something at terrapincomputercompany.com, it knows where to go. But we can't get into it because the person who created it no longer works there. They're no longer in the state. No one knows where they are.
Oh, man.
And he didn't use a company address he used something different. So our ability to go in there and actually change the password has really been difficult. Now that's a good thing. That's a feature, not a bug. You hear me say that a lot. And the idea,
setting up a domain, that's a feature.
Yeah, and the fact that we can't just go in and change it unless we have the right credentials and stuff is a good thing, so that some ex-employee can't go and hijack your domain. That's a good thing. You don't want someone to quit and then steal your domain and route all the email to their mail server while they're squabbling with you over whatever. So the domain registrars, Network Solutions, GoDaddy, whoever it might be, Enom, there's a variety of them out there. And there's some main ones which you mainly want to stick with, but they're real sticklers about letting you change that. If you don't have those credentials and you can't do a password reset in some way
To an
because you
email,
actually
you
own
can't
the
access.
email
Yeah.
address, then they don't assume that you just call and say, actually, this is us, change it. They don't do that.
Yeah.
And again, on purpose. That's
Yeah.
part of the
I
plan.
mean, that's what you want them to be like. But at the same time, when it's a legitimate issue that you're having, it must be very frustrating to be like, I promise it's me.
Yeah.
You know, you have no way to actually prove that.
They have a way through that you can do things legally to show that you are legally that entity.
Okay.
With corporation records and any number of things, and it takes time to do. And sometimes that's sort of difficult. So here's the upshot of all that is be very careful how that's set up. And here's a couple of key things to remember. And you can go in and have your tech team change this for you now, or you can do it yourself. There's the administrative record, there's the billing record, and there's the technical record. Those are the three main records that are attached to any domain registration, which might be yourcompany.com, that domain registration, yourcompany.net, terrapin.tech, whatever it might be. You want your name and your email address, even if it's one that you as the small business owner have separately. Whatever, that's one that you got to be sure that you have, and you want your name there. You don't want to say to the tech person who's working for you, just hook it up for me. Just handle it. I don't know how this stuff works. You want to be sure that your company as a principal owner is on that administrative contact. Now, the billing contact has access to make credit card changes and that kind of thing. The technical record has the access to make these changes, to point it to a new web host, or to point the email to someplace new. Maybe you're moving over to Office 365. You got to be able to point email to go there. It's called an MX record for mail exchange. That has to go over there. So I have a disgruntled employee and he or she leaves and they try to change these MX records to hijack that. As the administrative contact, I can go in there and fix that very quickly. I can never be shut out of it. The top level one that owns the account is the administrative contact.
And you want to make sure that's
you. That way you can protect against a bookkeeper who leaves, who's the billing director and turns out was using the wrong credit card, or the technical record. That's okay to have be your current IT person. Now, one of those things that you'll want to keep track of, and whether it's I would recommend to do this maybe in your password manager that we talk about a lot. As a place to keep track of that, but you want to keep track of those kind of things that, frankly, you would need to, if that person ever leaves your company, if you separate from them, that's part of your offboarding process.
It's making sure that you get all of the things that they may have been involved in back under your own umbrella.
Not just the keys, but the admin password for Microsoft, the admin, their credentials to network solutions or wherever your domain is registered. And so that's, again, where you need a trusted tech manager to be able to help you through that, because that's really important. If that gets out of whack, now it can get out of whack really badly if you have some tech manager's name on everything and that person leaves and decides to be malicious. They can steal your domain. Now, you can get it back through a long process if you are the legal owner of that company name, but it's not. It takes time and is really messy. Obviously, you'd want to avoid that. You don't want to mess with that. And it's the same kind of thing also. Here's what also can happen. You're using some big, long domain name from 8 years ago or 15 years ago, but you still want to protect it. You don't want anyone else to have it. You may have some stuff that's still registered to that, which is not inappropriate to do. So let's go with terrapincomputercompany.com, great big long thing. If I've got the wrong person as the administrator and billing and tech, who's no longer with the company, to an email that no longer exists, domain needs to be renewed. They send an email out to this email that doesn't even exist. You don't even know it needs to be renewed. You totally lost track of it.
Oh,
It then goes dormant. Somebody else picks it up. and they won't sell it. They're going to sell it to you for $1,000. They squat on it. It's referred to as squatting.
A squatter.
And people keep an eye on stuff that is as expired, and after it's been expired for 6 months or even less than that, a month or so, they can buy it for their own $15, and now they own someone who you do not know, who's doing this for financial inducement, owns your old internet domain. Terrapin Computer Company, mybiglongcomputername.com.
So then what do you do?
Well, you can still have a squabble with them, and now you have to go into a very different legal squabble,
Okay.
because Network Solutions or whomever is going to say they bought this. You had every right to renew this. You didn't do it. Well, we lost track of the email. Well, can't.
Yeah.
That's part of the. So you want to know, and you want a central place that this is all kept. Now, we do this for some of our customers as their tech manager. We are contractually obligated to do this. And we're contractually obligated to give it to them if we ever separate, which we always would. But you want to have some kind of a spreadsheet or a good database that you can control, you have access to, that keeps track of all this stuff. So that when you separate with someone, when your in-house tech person leaves, or your one-person show who you call when things break, or whatever it might be, you just want to know that you know what's going on here. It's not unlike a lot of your tax records with your accountant. You need to be able to have access to that stuff. It doesn't do any good
to just hand it over to somebody.
Yeah, and if the accountant's the only person who can log into irs.gov on your behalf, and your email's not even part of that, that's not a good thing. So, and any accountant, any reputable accountant would tell you the same thing. Any CPA would tell you the same thing. That's yours. It belongs to your company, your corporation, not to them. So you don't mind giving them access to it. They're your corporate accountant. That's appropriate, but that does not mean that they should be the only one who can do it. And anything from them meeting a untimely demise to them going rogue and being a criminal.
That you can get stuff back, basically, is what you want to make sure.
Yeah, it belongs to you.
You can get control of your own stuff.
It belongs to your company, and you want to make sure that you maintain complete control of that, and that you know that you can recreate things if needed. Where we saw this recently, which is why this came up, is for an old domain that really isn't used anymore, but they wanted to keep it, which I think is appropriate. They want to keep it. And I also don't want to have some squatter have it, and who does whatever else to it. You don't want some squatter getting it. Now, here's something else that's happened on the real bad side. Squatter gets it, says, I'll sell it to you for $1,000. You say, I really don't care about it. And then they rewrite it to a porn site.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I guess I never even thought.
Yeah. Or gambling site or something in Russia or wherever. So there's a lot of bad things that can happen. It just makes sense to do it. And you think, man, I don't know anything about this stuff. You don't know a lot about the accounting, and you have your accountant handle it.
Yeah, that's true.
Or you have your attorney handle it. Have a good tech. That's why it's important to have a good, solid tech manager that's really a partner more than just I'll call you if it breaks type of computer person.
Someone like a team nerd.
Just like your loyal team nerd here at Terrapin Networks, terrapin.tech. That kind of thing, where you have complete control of that with a trusted tech manager.
Welcome back to the Team Nerd Tech Show with your host, Tim Gillen. I am Ruthie Kierman. So we're moving into our last segment now, which is Tech Gadget. And I want to talk to you about this cool app that you sent me. We have a link here on the website at terrapin.tech and at teamnerdtechshow.com from Gizmodo about this app that tells you when other Internet of Things appliances are tracking your moves. So it's got like this map where you can check in, and it'll show you everything that's kind of watching you. Have you downloaded this app? I know that it's really new. It just came out.
It just came out. I had a quick look at it. We'll do a more thorough review later, but I'm very intrigued by it.
Yeah.
Now, again, my normal nervousness. Okay, they're going to tell me everything that's around me only because they know exactly where I'm at. So it's
like Inception.
yeah, right. It is like Inception. The world's folding over on top of me.
Yeah.
And so, but I guess that's how they have to do it. So you have to turn your location services on for it to know what's around you. But of course, if you don't mind going through that, you can turn it on for that app and off for that app as you need to use it.
Yeah.
Because the idea is it will look around you, and by checking just the internet, and you don't need to be on the internet. You will be through your cell connection, but it's going to triangulate you by cell towers, what it's going to do.
Okay.
And that's how it's going to get your location, probably more than GPS for this particular application. But it's going to tell you all around you, what are all the IoT devices, Internet of Things devices, security cameras, Alexas, whatever it might be that are around you as you wander
watching
around
where
town,
you're going.
and then maybe watching where you're going, primarily security cameras. And, these Ring cameras and doorbell cameras and Nest and stuff, which are becoming this kind of weird mesh of following everyone around under the auspices of keeping things
Safety.
safer. But safety and liberty, that whole challenge we talk about a lot. But this is an interesting app, and we'll maybe try to do a little more thorough review of it later. But I found it really intriguing. That's why we shared it out on our Twitter page.
Yeah. I can't wait to kind of like dig into it. Like I said, it was normally we wouldn't present something that we weren't a little bit more familiar with, but this looked so cool, and we both got so excited that it's a brand new app that needs to be looked into a little bit more to see exactly what benefits it can bring.
And seem very intriguing.
Totally. It's an interesting idea.
This could have some good value. Now, we live in northern Michigan. We have a small little town. We tend to drive around every place else. This will really be interesting for someone like you, Ruthie, in Queens.
Just walking around New York.
Just walking around New York and walking around the boroughs and in the neighborhoods in the different boroughs, but especially in Queens where you live, in the Woodside neighborhood of Queens. And it's interesting what that's going to show you. So something that's interesting about this Internet of Things assistant is it has been put out by Carnegie Mellon University. So it would seem it doesn't have a commercial focus behind it, so it might be a little bit safer. However, the early one that they're doing here requires you to register. And I don't know why that would be even kind of necessary, except that they want to take the information for their own research.
And track it in some way.
Which makes me part of their, that flips it upside down. So, but they're getting some pushback on that. I got a hunch they may make it so you can, because there's no need for it to register. You should just be able to run it on your phone.
Yeah. It doesn't need your information to tell you what's tracking you, right? It shouldn't, in theory.
We won't do anything with it, Ruthie. We just want it for research. But
again, I sense a little bit of sarcasm from you there.
Just a little /s, a little sarcasm there.
Yeah.
But so again, we'll keep an eye on it. Very intriguing. Very interesting, and could serve a really neat function, a really positive function, if it doesn't have any of the other nonsense along with it. So that's what we'll keep an eye on for you.
All right. Well, we'll report back.
Yes.
I think we're going to download it, check it out, get a feel for it, and report back as to how it works.
That's what we'll do.
All right. Well, thanks again for hanging out with me again this week, Tim. Let's get together again next week and solve the world's problems one tech issue at a time. All right.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.